When I thought of starting the Inchstones podcast, there was only one person that rose that had to be, you know, victim zero. And that is who I'm so lucky to call my friend, Dr. Kerry Magro, known as the autistic professional speaker, best-selling author, self-advocate, and truly one of the coolest humans I know. And I'm not blowing smoke. You know that to be true. I really think you're one of the coolest people I know. So without further ado, Kerry Magro to the Inchstones podcast. How are you today?
Glad to be here, Sarah. You're so sweet. So proud to be able to call you a friend and to have gotten the opportunity to play Santa for your kids
I mean,
and
seriously.
all that other fun stuff in between. But you're awesome, and you're speaking now, and you're doing some awesome stuff yourself. So proud to know you as well, my friend.
Wow. Well, so we were just talking before we pressed record that, I love, and self-acceptance is a huge part of anyone, but specifically in the neurodiversity field. So, Kerry Magro, what are you most proud of for being Kerry Magro?
Oh my God, I think I'm most proud of just the ability to strive. I literally, as a kid, I was so scared of the world around me. And especially when I was non-speaking and trying to find my voice for the first time, I always felt like I had a 9 to 5 job, even as like a 4-year-old child, because always felt like, I saw kids that with so many different friends and at birthday parties that I wasn't getting invited to. And I was just like, oh my God, it's like, I want that in my life. And I really had to strive. I really had to just but like having that like mentality as a kid really, I think, made my adult years so much easier. And I think that's something that I've kind of just been really proud of myself over the years, and just having that self-motivation and striving to just, become the best version of myself that I possibly could. And, now looking back at that kid who was like scared of the world, and now having the blessings I have in my life, it's just been truly an amazing ride.
What point did you think, okay, not only do I feel confident in who I've become and who I'm constantly becoming, but that I can speak about this on a public level? And, one of the things I talk about so honestly, and I also know it's innate because of how I was raised, but leaning in with such vulnerability and lack of shame, because those two things I think you and I both know can cloud the experience around neurodiversity. I'm, ADHD, and I believe that, there's a film that has to be pulled back. I believe that film is ridding yourself of the shame and leading in with vulnerability. What do you feel got you to that point where you were like, you know what, not only am I doing this and proud of myself, but I can speak to this?
Well, I mean, I think it all like came to me when I really first understood that whole concept of neurodiversity for the first time, because growing up, I had no idea what neurodiversity meant. I just knew disability. And I knew that people with disabilities had longing challenges that were going to hinder them for the rest of their lives. And it wasn't until I got to college where I was like, oh my God, there's this whole group of people out there like the Temple Grandins of the world, and not being able to call her a friend, and like be able to text her like every now and then and just be like, oh
It's
my God,
awesome.
I have questions. It's like, I'm still starstruck, but like the whole
Now you know
concept.
how I feel in your presence. Because when I became an autism mom, someone was like, oh my God, you got to start following Kerry Mack.
Yeah, no, I mean, like when I first realized about neurodiversity, that was something that made me realize like, oh my God, not only were there people out there like doing this for a career and speaking and sharing their story and sharing their voice to just empower and help other people. I grew up as a theater kid. I tell embarrassingly to most of the crowds I speak to that I wanted to become the sixth member of the Backstreet Boys. And I fell in love with
It was the
theater.
routines. It was the dance routines. We
It
all
was the
loved it.
dance routines. This
It's like,
autistic person, I love routines. So there you
me
go.
too.
Uh, but yeah, so long story short, I fell in love with just being on stage and that concept. And then I was like, oh my God, this could be a career. And then now, like with the numbers of autism when I was in college, I think we're like one in every like 150 were diagnosed with autism. And then
Mhm.
now it's one in 34, I believe, in the US. It's become a topic that's in every household, whether you have a personal connection or just know of someone in the community who has autism. It's been a
Yeah,
labor of love. Been doing it for over 13 years now, and getting
amazing.
opportunities speaking K through 12 and to companies and to government organizations and talk about neurodiversity, not only autism but a wide range of
Yeah.
disabilities has been truly just an incredible ride, and I hope I can do it for many decades to come.
As someone who's doing it parallel to you in a different capacity, I'd love to hear what have been some of the coolest questions that you think have been asked to you just as in being Carrie, just as Carrie being Carrie.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, what I could say is Q&A is actually my favorite part of every presentation I give
Me
because
too.
often, like, sometimes they're not even questions, they're just, like, comments, like, I have a family member who's impacted by this, and that, or a self-advocate who's like, "I had similar challenges to you." And hearing those, like, testimonies, like, makes me realize, like, I'm not alone in this community, and I I've known that for years now, but to just
Mhm.
hear, like, those personal stories and testimonies from companies and in our schools has been truly an amazing ride. I think one of my most fondest questions was from a fifth grader. I was speaking on bullying prevention for National Bullying Prevention Month, and a kid came up to me and said, "You know, Carrie, you shared a few self-advocate videos in your presentation, and I never realized that people could feel the way that those kids felt that were bullied. And I used to bully people like that, and I want you to know that I'm never going to bully anyone again because I know the challenges that people now face now after seeing these videos." The
That's
kid asked me,
profound.
yeah, so, like for a fifth grader to
For a
say that.
fifth grader, that's like they're like 10 or 11.
Yeah, seriously. It's like he should be on stage. And I was just like blown away. And then, just asking questions after the presentation and just being like, oh my God, it's like, how can I become an ally? I think that's, if I often say it's like if I never got another speaking engagement to have that like one question and answer period would have truly just like it brings it full circle. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think my brand of motherhood in general has always been like like living outside, interacting with the world. I grew up in a family that traveled a lot. So I innately, in having children, wanted to travel and do experiences and get out there. And that's why I got, to meet you in person and then form a friendship. How do you guide parents with young autistic children to really get out there and experience the world? What can you instill in parents?
Yeah, totally. I was looking at a mom blog on Instagram the other day, and it was talking about the idea of routines. And it's like, never take a kid out of their routine who has autism. But when you take them out of that routine, you not only help them build self awareness of like what is out there in the world that they may be potentially capable of, it also introduces the world to your child and them become a more inclusive. And I just remind them it's like, we can't be afraid to have our kids just be in the world around them because that's
Yeah.
where we are going to make change. We're seeing celebrities and political figures who are just coming
Hmm.
out about having a child
Yep.
who's diagnosed, and it was because they weren't scared of having their child out there in the world and exploring the world around them and not being afraid, but being able to engage and help them grow as people too.
What resonates with me always is, well, it's not going to be easy. There's expectations that we, for some reason, put on ourselves as parents of, neurodiverse kids. And just as a human in general, we have these like expectations that like something has to go a certain way. And I think when you just allow for the range of an experience to land where it is, it still can be really fulfilling. I mean, there are just things that I know are going to be 30 times harder. And I don't give a lot of weight to that because I still think it's worth doing. That's the kind of power about when I talk about Inchstones is who cares if you try a new experience and it's only 15 minutes? You still did it.
Yep.
How would you word putting that power back in parents?
I go back to Temple a lot, and one of her theories is around, she calls it the rubber band theory, where it's like, hey, anytime I hear a rubber band, I was obsessed with like 90s and 2000s hip hop song, like they give T.I. and the rubber band song. Like,
That's
God,
a whole new podcast. Kerry
well, that's a
Magro
new
and the
whole
90s
podcast,
music.
and that's the type of music we're hearing in the oldies and like Walmart and Target. It's sorry about that. It's another day. But what I can say, she has this theory where it's like you have to stretch our kids to see what they're capable of, like
Mm-hmm.
rubber band, but you also have to meet them where they are in their development to know when to just stretch a little bit and not stretch too far to lead to breakdowns, meltdowns, etc., and
Mm-hmm.
so forth, where they might be overstimulated. So it's all about just meeting your kid where they are. And my parents had this rule when I was growing up. It was the 3-strike rule. I had to try something at least 3 times before, especially with sensory challenges. You know, once I did something once, I often was like, I had that no phase for much. And it was really, really important that my parents didn't just like give in and they, you know what, you're going to have to try this 3 times and let's see if it actually works for you. And I mean, that's how I found some of my strongest key interests, like basketball, being able to like tell you all 30 NBA teams and every single player
Right.
on one of those teams. That was the theme growing up, and it's something I tell parents all the time.
I mean, it sounds so simple. It sounds so simple. It's not easy.
Right.
As a parent who just craves, like craving to understand your child is such a beautiful subject to learn, giving them the power, because I think every child, whether they're, typical or neurodiverse, like they enjoy choices. And autistic children tend to be more rigid in their choices. It doesn't mean that they don't like given the opportunity to try the new thing. It just needs to be presented more frequently or in a different way. And that expands my own environment. Hey,
Yeah.
I gave you 3 shots as a friend. I mean, right?
Yeah, absolutely. See, and I kept you.
You
You
kept
kept
me
me.
around. It was the Lakers fandom that really almost pushed me over the edge, but it's okay.
I know,
It's all
I
right.
know.
It's okay.
The struggle is real. The
The
struggle is
struggle
real.
is real. What would be one of your favorite things about the movement now in neurodiversity? Like,
Well, I think the two biggest things are that we are pivoting our conversations away from cures, really just focusing more on progress. We had autism organizations when I just started becoming an autism advocate like 17, 18 years ago, where it was very research based and we were trying to find like, all these different things around how we can cure somebody of their autism. And now, what I love to see, just as an advisory member for so many different national autism organizations, is that we've taken away the focus on research and focusing more on progress, and go about having larger conversations about providing meaningful resources across the span for those who are on the autism spectrum. So I think that's one of
mhm,
the biggest things. But the second thing is that we're talking about adults, because neurodiverse children will become adults, and you see this huge age cliff once these kids age out of high school and there aren't enough services and supports out there for them. And
mhm.
it's so jarring when I hear from older parents who are just thinking about what will happen to my child when I'm gone.
No, I
There's
know.
so many unanswered questions around guardianship, housing, unemployment. I mean, love getting the opportunity to give professional development for companies and talk about neurodiversity in the workplace, because of the fact that the majority of neurodiverse individuals are unemployed or underemployed compared
I
to their
know.
non-disabled peers. And we need to have larger conversations of what that looks like.
Much
So I think
larger.
those two areas are definitely things I'm super proud that we're having larger conversations about. We still have a long way to go, but
Mhm.
those are definitely areas that I'm hoping we can have more conversations with moving forward.
I agree. One of the byproducts of speaking about my own journey that I was not anticipating at all was going into companies and there being obviously like this Gen Z workforce, right? They're fresh out of college, their prefrontal cortex like literally just closed up. Okay. They're baby adults. And I mean, I think about this from a scientific thing of like, you know, what really does that generation do in terms of creating a better work environment for neurodiversity? And honestly, I got put in my place on this. Their level of emotional intelligence and curiosity about neurodiversity is one of the most shocking things that I, as a geriatric millennial, felt is the coolest thing about this. No, I mean, I am. I'm a geriatric millennial. I'm 41 years old. I'm an 83 baby. Do you think that the generations that are having more peers that are diagnosed will only aid in that progress?
Yeah, I definitely think so because when I was just starting off my career, I mean, we like employee resource groups were even something that I never heard about. I heard of HR departments, maybe a DEI initiative, but never actual groups and subgroups. I mean, it's like I was at S&P Global last year for Autism Acceptance Month. And they only had an ERG group for called the Abilities Group, but had a subgroup for parents of children impacted by disabilities. And I was just thinking to myself, like, oh my God, how far have we come where now we could have these conversations? And from your point about just like looking at Gen Z and like the future of our places, we're just going to see this as just part of the normal conversation
Yeah.
because those with disabilities make up the largest minority in the United States, but they're often one of the most underserved populations
Hmm.
in our companies because of the fact that, I mean, some people with disabilities, don't get me wrong, they have high support needs. Some individuals do. But there are individuals where I sound like a broken record so many times. I tell companies that those with disabilities are more likely to stay at a job longer. They're more
Yeah.
likely to take less time off from work. And when we talk about the bottom line, especially even like 4 years out of COVID-19 and so many people money pinching, even in some of the Fortune 500 companies, majority of reasonable accommodations don't cost anything at all. And when they do, it's just typically an onboarding fee of $500. So it's not it's not about what a company can do for a neurodiverse person, but it's what a neurodiverse person can do for
Hmm.
that company.
The I, you know, that's all I need to know. I get is like it is changing and it is becoming more open and accepting.
Yeah, totally, 100%. And the representation is great too. We're seeing it more
Yeah.
in our media, and it's a beautiful thing to say. So I'm excited to see what they do next. Your family are just the most like Millie just like steals my heart every single time I see a photo pop up on Facebook. Just oh my God.
She is, listen, the best part about that is that, and as you know, like she doesn't care who likes her, who doesn't like her. Millie is just happy being Millie. I believe that because they only know how to be who they are, that it is the greatest gift as a parent to be front row watching it. I recorded a podcast with my best friend who I said, you got a front row at this. And how has that changed your own parenting and her experience? That opened up her idea of letting her kids be the best version of themselves. And that's because of Millie, who she is, has allowed and freed other people to do the same for themselves. That's the coolest part about it. Yeah, it's just Millie's world. It's just Kerry's world. We're all just living at it, taking notes from the best. Because I really hope that the Inchstones podcast becomes about doing the next right thing, being the best version of yourself, and not being afraid to take the small step.
Yeah, I mean the biggest thing is I often say it takes a village. So guys who are joining us today, don't feel afraid to get in
Yeah.
contact with us anytime, and I'm sure Sarah, you feel the same way. You can check out my website, kerrymagro.com. I speak regularly with companies and K through 12 programs, so definitely reach out to me on my contact form. If you're curious, we do in-person and virtual presentations. So we've done things around the globe to provide resources and education to our communities.
Well, holidays and specifically Christmas and Santa, you have changed, in our area in New Jersey, the ability for my kids to experience this really special holiday and time of year. My hope is that people just copy and paste and look to you to do this all around the country. But the space that you hold and the environment that you and your team get to create through that is just awesome. It's now a tradition for us. Having traditions that's the coolest thing about this. They can still be traditions for your children that experience taking the world differently, and it doesn't take away from those moments. So you and that white beard, man, it looks good on
Yeah.
you. You shed some
Yeah.
pounds, you sweat it all out in that costume.
Yeah, I literally, as I'm like looking at myself in the screen, I'm like seeing my like first white hair too. So it's like it's only a matter of time. I just grow the
The
beard
good
out.
news is, Carrie, is that I will always be older than you. I will always be older than you.
Stop
So
it. No, you won't.
yes, yes. All right. Well, thank you to my dear friend, Dr. Kerry Magro, for this wonderful conversation. You're the best. We appreciate you so much.
You are too. Thanks for the opportunity.